You know that the night time, ooh, is the right time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Don't you know, baby? Night time to be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of. Night time is the time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Say now, baby, my mother died and my father, well, he broke down and cried. Ooh, baby, yeah, when I come home, baby, I want to hold you in my arms. You know that the night of time.
Hello everybody, welcome to video number 7 of How to Dance Drag Blues, a beginner's approach. My name is Joe Demers and I'm from Denver, Colorado.
And I'm Jessica Cutler, and I'm also from Denver, Colorado.
Today's series is going to present a pedagogy to help beginners learn drag blues, and it was developed by our very own Jessica Cutler.
Thank you very much, Joe. I love drag blues. It's my absolute favorite style of blues dancing, favorite music to come on when I'm at a swing dance. And what I love about it is the versatility of the dance, the shapes it creates, and the really soft but changeable connection that happens all throughout the dance. It's one of my absolute favorite dances in the world, and I've had such a pleasure and an honor to be working with Joe for the last 2 years now.
Thank you.
It's been really amazing, and as we've gone through these workshops, I've watched students who are really trying to learn how to do the technique so that the dance works and so that it feels good. And I was thinking on this, and for me it came down to a pedagogy of technique, where I came to an idea that there's a fundamental premise of technique. I have to learn this specific piece and have it be working in myself and with my partnership, and then there's a next fundamental piece. So with that, I'm super excited to share this, and I hope it's really helpful, and I can't wait to dance with all of you. So the first thing I want to talk about is posture. Posture is the shape that I make with my body. We think of posture as standing, but we have a sitting posture and a walking posture and a dancing posture, and drag blues is a series of postures. So in order to have a good connection with my partner, I need to have a good connection to my own body by having a strong and balanced posture. So for my posture, I want to look at engaging my lower belly and my core, and thinking about pulling my belly button towards my spine so that my pelvis is stacked either right underneath my rib cage or even a tiny bit back of it without it tilting this way or tilting this way. I have a neutral pelvis and it takes back slightly from my rib cage. So once I get my pelvis in a good position, then the next thing I want to look at is my feet. So I want my feet to be weighted evenly through the foot. I like to favor the front of the foot and the inside edge. So I don't want to be dancing all the time on my heels. I want to be front a little bit. I want to keep my weight on the inside edges, and I prefer a little bit of turnout. This is going to create a little bit more stability, and it makes it much prettier. From the pelvis up, I want to find a nice lifting through my rib cage, as if my rib cage and my head were filled with helium, and they're expanding and rising out, and it has a very soft feeling to it, while from the hips down, I'm bending and matching the bend of my partner and grounding and engaging into the floor. So from here, in this situation, I feel really strong in all directions and really balanced.
So now let's try some different shapes focusing on the strength of our body as well as our balance. So let's start by putting one foot forward and the other foot backward. Now let's practice some of Jess's techniques. Let's work from the feet up to the head, okay? So let's have a slight turnout of the feet. Let's think about lifting up through the legs, lifting up through the pelvis, and at the pelvis, checking in that it's not tilting one way or the other way too much. Keeping a neutral pelvis here. And then from there, pulling in the abs, lifting up through the rib cage, opening out, keeping the head nice and tall, and feeling strong and balanced.
From here, for bonus material, engage the back of your armpits and a little bit your lats to make your shoulder or your arm bone stabilize into your rib cage so that my arms are connected to my torso. With this connection, I can relax my arms a little bit. This is kind of difficult, but it's definitely worth working on.
Let's try another shape. Let's try sitting back into one foot this time. So perhaps maybe the left foot sitting back into it. Let's have the hips maybe extend a little bit behind us, creating more like a K, if you can imagine a K shape. And let's find the balance there. Maybe turning out your feet might help. Maybe if they're too turned out, turning them in, finding the middle point. Checking that everything is lifted. Again, check your pelvis. Are you sitting forward? Are you sitting back? You might feel pinch in the back. Releasing that down, pulling up through the abs, up through the rib cage, holding your neck. And now maybe let's shape that some more. Maybe dip a little bit more into that. Okay, how does that feel? Do you feel strong? Do you feel balanced?
Excellent. Now let's practice close embrace. I found a good posture and shape, and now we're going to find a great posture and shape to be dancing with our partner. So I'm going to come up to Joe, and I'm going to stagger my feet so that my right foot can kick between his legs, and his right foot can kick between my legs. There, what do you know? I'm going to take my sternum and line it up with this line. It's kind of like where your suspenders would be. So I line
My
up
right suspender.
my tie to your suspender.
Awesome.
And I'm going to come a little bit forward so that we're making a t-shirt style connection. I'm looking to feel connection in the front rather than trying to find my connection with his arm in the back. So instead of finding pressure here, I come gently forward and I have a pressure of 0 or 1.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to connect the open hand. It's important to connect with palm to palm, and then close your fingers for an aesthetic look. Sometimes we find dancers opening their fingers in dancing, and we go up and gently remind them, close those fingers, we think they look better. If your partner is taller than you, with regards to this hand, you want to make sure that we match the follower's frame. Okay, so leaders, let me give you an example. If I'm going to be taller than Jess right now, sometimes I have a tendency to lift my arm up to my frame. But imagine having Jess dancing like that, right? This arm with a taller person, it's not so comfortable. So to help make my partner feel comfortable, if I'm taller, I'm going to lower my arm down to my partner's frame. And now look at Jess's body. It's in line and it's comfortable. So now let's try the reverse. If I'm a shorter individual, and instead of keeping my arm down here at my frame, I'm going to raise it up to Jess's frame. And so we want the follower to be in an optimal position to receive that communication. And sometimes, if it's up here, if her arm is up here, or sometimes if Jess's arm is down here, it's not the best place to receive communication.
I like my arm with my elbow down and my lats engaged to be a little bit lower than my shoulder with a palm-to-palm connection, as if I were going to do a push-up, but then instead I had a really relaxed arm.
Okay, so you can look at it from different angles here. Okay, let's continue talking about close embrace, building our close embrace by talking about the other side of our body.
On this side, I like to make a circle and to wrap around like a butterfly. So after we make the forward connection, now I'm going to let my arm wrap around from the armpit, down to the humerus, down through the forearm, and finally across at the fingers. And if your faces touch a little bit softly, that's okay, but we don't want to be leading and following with pressure from the head. Because my head is full of helium, my body is lifting, so any touch is very soft in the face.
So let's talk about why Jess just called it a butterfly connection. And if we imagine maybe a butterfly or a bird flapping its wings, we would imagine that this goes up through the back, through the arms, down through the back, through the arms, and then to the hands. And so when we connect, we're going to imagine that opening our chest, opening our sternum, lifting our head, connecting from the body down the arm, all the way to the fingertips being last. Let's show that, what it looks like. We come together, we lift up, and then we close everything in nice and softly. Now let's talk about what the opposite looks like. So what if we put the hand first, and then the elbow second, and the body third? Here's what it might look like. So we go hand, the body, and now if we started dancing, imagining that right there.
It's a little crunchy.
A little crunchy, right? So for the most comfortable close embrace, we're going to think about inside of the body to the outside of the body, wrapping around to be nice and comfortable. Now we haven't added the drag loose aesthetic yet because we're building a solid foundation of posture and connection, and we'll get to shaping soon.
Excellent. I like to do an embrace that wraps over and around the top of my leader's shoulder. This to me, I like the aesthetic of it and I like the feeling of it. And what I do with this is I let it slide and move, so I'm not creating friction, I'm not grabbing or pushing. Some may prefer to be lower. Some may prefer to be about here. Each embrace is going to be different with each partner, and what's important is that it's comfortable and functional for your partnership.
Let's put that in a context for different heights. So if I'm taller than Jess, it might be difficult to reach around my neck, okay? So instead, what's important is that the connection just goes around the body, right? And it's a light connection and one that's movable. For example, in case we go to open position. So here's what it might look like. So if we're shorter here, we're going to do a butterfly. I'm going to connect either at the elbow or at the wrist, and Jess is going to connect around my body. So notice that she's on my arm. Jess, let's try a different one where you go around to my back. So we're here, and we go butterfly around, and maybe around to the back. Okay? So that's an example. It doesn't have to be here, so it can be around the body. Anywhere, as if you're going to give a really good hug, because that's a close embrace.
So say you have a really huge difference where your leader is extraordinarily taller than you, you can actually go under the arm and around the back.
And notice that Jess's head is facing you. That's so she doesn't have to smell my armpit. Okay, and then one more thing for shorter leaders, right? For the shorter height distance, same. I'm going to think about here, wrapping around Jess's body, and she can think about wrapping around my neck. Now, what's important is for both individuals, you stand at your height. We don't want the follower being taller, and if I'm shorter, we don't want the follower kneeling down or squatting down, because we lose some of the aesthetic that we're about to bring in. So for the beginning, for the entry-level connection of close embrace, we want to stand at our heights, perhaps navigate the height differences in how we connect where our arm is placed.
So when we establish first a strong posture, and we're maintaining that technique, and then we establish a great connection in our embrace, and then we maintain that technique. With those two things in place, then leading and following the weight transfers is going to be no problem. I'm always tracking my leader to see where he is, or where Joe is in this case, in his weight transfers. I'm going to not only be following what axis Joe is on, but I'm also following the rate he's transferring at. So if he goes through and gets on 2 feet and really slowly transfers his weight, I'm going to transfer my weight slowly. If he transfers it more quickly, I'm going to match that. But I'm always tracking his axis and being with him in that way.
So when it comes to practicing our weight transfer connection here, let's begin with a side-to-side weight transfer. And so 2 feet, not picking up the feet, in a comfortable close embrace. You did your butterfly connection, you're holding your posture, you have a compression of 1 or 0, it's very light in the chest. Just side to side, shift our bodies, shift our weight. So then, if we choose to, now we can pick up a foot, okay? Now we can pick up a foot to make sure that we're completely committed. And now we can start maybe trying to turn in a circle, keeping our side-to-side connection, matching the rate at which we go, changing the rate.
I love it when the leaders practice transferring their weight in different rates and also add pauses. You can have a whole dance with weight transfers taking up a very small amount of space by listening to the music and transferring your weight at different rates as you hear it accordingly. It can feel really comfortable and really relaxing, and it's very pleasant.
So now let's take our weight transfers, and now let's go forward and backward. We have some assumptions that we want both dancers to consider. The first is, in drag blues, we try to keep a neutral connection. So what that means is I will present energy, perhaps through a weight transfer, and it is Jess's responsibility to match that energy, meaning she will give it back to me. So just like we have a handshake, if Jess squeezes my hand, and I squeeze secondly, that's called matching. And what we try to do is we try to bring the timings closer together. Go ahead, Jess. So maybe this time I'm a little slow, but as I practice more and more, maybe we're together. And now, quickly, Jess, we're together, right? So we can go together, 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 right? And I'm not telling Jess, hey, squeeze your hand. She's offering it in return. And so we want to think about weight transfers this way. If I step towards Jess, she's going to step back out of the way, and she's going to move, okay? Notice that maybe we have 0 compression, so let's just do fingertips here. If I move away from Jess, she keeps up with me. If I go slowly, she keeps up with me. If I go quickly in large steps, she keeps up. Now going backwards for the follower is the most challenging, but notice how Jess adds extra energy to make sure that she keeps the distance. And so I enter her space, I enter her space. As much as possible, we are trying to keep this distance the same, right? And maybe we come this way, and then this way, right? So now as we bring this closer, we add connection, but we try not to have perhaps a push or a pull. Just tries to imagine the space that is between us and keeping it the same.
I am matching Joe. I am matching the amount of energy that he is using to go forward and back, and I'm matching the shape that he's making as we walk. At any point, we might decide that we want to be in a closer or a close embrace. In which case, I'm going to connect forward first, a little bit of a forward intention, but maintaining a pressure of 1. So that means that we have enough pressure to maintain touching, but not enough pressure to crush a butterfly.
I like that, for butterfly connection.
Butterfly connection, soft in the front. And so we make this pressure, so we make this pressure of 1. I'm going to maintain that exact same feeling as I'm walking forward and as I'm walking back. So walking forward is easier because I can press into him really easily as I walk forward. Now as I walk back, the tendency will be to start going back and then to feel your connection go into the back arm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stay with my connection in the exact same way it felt to be forward. I'm going to keep it as I walk backward. So when we are going backward, what I think about is really moving my own body so that it's really easy to move me, so that Joe has plenty of to go forward. I don't want to become heavy and compress into him and make him force me to move.
A lot of work.
Contrarily, I don't want to start going into the back and go ahead of him. I'm going to maintain the exact same butterfly pressure that I had walking forward. And as I feel his body start to go forward and my body start to go back, I'm reaching and moving myself with as little effort from Joe as possible. So he could stop at any point and I would be totally on balance in my position.
So let's practice an exercise here. Right, just to imagine it. Imagine that this is where Jess and I are starting. And I want you to imagine that I'm walking towards Jess as maybe a phantom Joe. And so here she goes. She goes down the line, down the line, down the line. She moves her own body. Notice that she has energy. Notice that she has timing. Notice the weight transfers. So come on, back, Jess. So now, when we try it together, it's the same exact image that Jess is moving her own body. She has her own energy. She's making her own weight transfers. And this, again, is how we keep the butterfly connection. There are some dance techniques that utilize the push and utilize a higher level of compression. But for today's drag blues lesson, we want that neutral level of compression that is a 0 or maybe a 1.
Excellent. So our next section is contra body. Once I have a great posture and a nice embrace, and I can track my partner's weight transfers, the next layer of the technique is going to be contra body movement. But with that, I'm going to pass it to you, Joe.
Great. So because today's video is a beginner's approach to drag blues, let's focus on the Savoy slow drag. Let's think about the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem, New York. The birth of Lindy Hop out of Charleston and jazz and swing. And so the Charleston is going to be a huge factor in shaping the body. Let's practice contra body movement with the Charleston. I'm going to start with my left foot going back, and Jess will start with her right foot going forward. We go a touch and a step and a touch and a step, just focusing on the feet and step, a touch. Now let's add a twist, a twist, a twist. So we're focusing on the rib cage, turning as we step, and we go touch, step, touch, and hold here, touch.
Notice that Joe's pelvis and my pelvis is still facing directly forward and directly back. We're not twisting the pelvis when we twist the upper body.
So now let's take our twist of the upper body, making sure that our legs and our pelvis are in the direction we need to go. And let's walk it into a line. So if we go walk with a twist, and a walk with a twist. Notice the rib cage is turning, and turning. Let's go the other way, maybe with a frame. We go a twist, da, 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 and a twist, da, 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 and a twist, da, da, da. Now let's try adding quicker steps, but keeping the twist, making sure that the feet and the pelvis, again, go in a straight line. Sometimes this happens when we start twisting the lower body and not the upper body. But for this walking, twisting the chest first. So now let's put it into a sequence that we can practice. We'll do 3 steps, 1 tap, and then reverse the directions. A 5, 6, ready, we go. A step, step, step with a tap, and a step, step, step with a tap. Think about maybe your frame, twisting the upper body, tap, twist, 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 and tap.
Great. Now let's try this with a partner. We're going to start this in a closed position, and what we're going to do is first find our posture, and then we're going to find our axis. I'm going to find Joe's axis, and I know where he is.
With some weight transfers.
He's going to stop on his right. I stop on my left. That's the leg we're standing on. And then from there, my right leg is free and his left leg is free. And we're going to go step, 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 tap. Step, 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 tap. And step, 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 tap, step, 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 tap. So I'm going to match the amount of contra body movement that I feel, the amount of twist, and the length of the step, and the timing of the step, and I'm going to be really seamlessly right with Joe.
So before we try a close embrace, let's try it without hands and without contact, so you get the timing and the energy and the flow. So we go shift and hold up stage. We go a step, a step, a step with a tap. Other way, a step, a step, a step with a tap. As we bring it to close embrace right here, Jess is still in charge of her own energy and moving her body, and I'm in charge of my body. We go a step, a step, a step with a tap. She moves, I move, we both move together. Step, step, step with a tap. Step, step, step with a tap.
Now we're going to try to close our embrace completely. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to find my butterfly connection through the arms, through the upper body. I'm engaging my lower belly. I find my weight on the front parts of my feet. I'm expanding up and tall, and I'm paying attention to what weight Joe is on. And with this connection, now we do the same sequence. Step, 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 tap. Step, 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 tap. Step, 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 tap. Step, 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 tap. There we go. Now let's check in to make sure, as we do the sequence, that we're not zombie walking. This is totally normal to happen in a partnership.
For sure.
Especially when you get closer. The closer you are, the more this pops up. So what that would look like is this.
Step, step, step with a tap, and a step, step, step with a tap.
Notice my arm is going in the same way my leg is going, rather than going in the opposite direction.
Step,
Opposite,
step
opposite,
with a tap.
versus same, same, same.
Now, Jess and I, we remember being a beginner, and that was, this is the hardest part of drag blues, is learning to keep your chest twisting against your lower body. So as a quick exercise, put your feet underneath you, twist to the right, twist to the left, twist to the right, and as we start walking, let that same twist happen. So let's move backwards. Twist, and twist, and twist, versus, ready for zombie walking? Zombie walking, zombie walking, zombie walking. So work on that twist so that we keep our contra body on every step. Now, let's move on to the shaping of the Savoy slow drag. So the energy that we want to present in the Savoy slow drag is going to be through the lower part of our body, or our pelvis and our hips. And so as we start walking forward and back, we want to send energy through that part of our body and step. So we're going to go energy back and step. But check in your balance that you're lifted and balanced and strong. Now let's imagine the energy through the hips, going backwards again, going back. And you'll notice that with Jess's hips, they're trying to extend forward. Now let's reverse that. We go the other direction. And a step, and a step, and a step. So you'll notice we have this slight lean, and lean, and lean. That's created by moving the lower part of our body versus the upper part of our body. It kind of loses the magic.
It's another dance we'll invent later.
We'll invent that dance later. So here we go. Forward and back, and forward and back, and forward and back, and forward and back. Now what's important is to bring back this concept that the followers move their bodies. So just like earlier, when I stepped into Jess's space, she stepped back. when it comes to this particular shaping, when my shape enters her space, Jess is going to move her hips out of the way without waiting for me to have contact or to have a push.
These are really fun shapes. It feels really good to match this.
Okay, so as we start bringing the connection to close embrace, we start moving the hips forward and back. Notice that Jess is completely in charge of her body, her balance, her movement. Okay, let's try that with the other foot. And again, shaping from the hips, forward and back, and forward and back, and forward and back. Let's bring this now into some steps. And the steps are going to keep a very particular shape. And let's maybe call them lunges. So I will step backwards in what we'll call a back lunge.
Stepping forward, I like to try to transfer my weight as much as possible. And I'm going to be rotated with my rib cage to the right.
You'll notice that my foot right now is turned out versus turned in. And this is to help me have balance right now, because this shape right here is not as strong as this shape, a turned out shape for me.
Notice also, do you mind that shape?
Sure.
Notice also, there's some space right here that I can place my body in. If Joe was to have his feet in without a turnout, you'll see that there's less space for me to come in.
And so as we start walking backwards, start considering the straight line, but perhaps some turnout of the foot. And so it looks like this: a walk, a walk, a walk. Or in the reverse direction, a walk, a walk, a walk. So we go back, and back, and back, and back, and a forward, and forward, and forward, and forward. Jess, will you talk about how you shape into me? Because I always appreciate your connection, and I always appreciate how soft you are. I always appreciate how much energy you give to me. That makes it so easy for me to dance with you.
Thank you. I really think about skin contact points that I am making as we go through the dance. So the first skin contact point I'm making is with our embrace and our weight transfers. But then also, when we do this with the shaping, I'm feeling contact that comes through the sides of the hips. I'm also feeling contact that comes from the outside of my knee to the inside of yours, and from the inside of my left thigh to the outside of your right. So we have this contact point, this contact point, this contact point,
Side hip.
and this contact point. It's a little bit, maybe a little bit the belly.
Belly and chest.
And so when his hips go back, I really offer my left hip and let it extend forward. When his right hip goes back, I really feel the outside of my leg touching the inside of his leg, so that it's almost like spooning, but with a very twisty position.
Now, if I step away, notice how balanced Jess is right now. And it's because Jess is in charge of her shape. And if we take one more step, she matches my body moving backwards. So let me move by myself. And you'll notice that Jess keeps her shape. And notice my shape. Now, as if Jess had stepped with me, it will look like this. Right? Jess is moving and keeping her own balance. So now as we take more than one step together, she's always thinking about these points of contact, keeping the balance strong and shaping into my shape.
When Joe starts to move forward, I really propel myself to move backwards so that our forward walking and our backward walking should feel, in our embrace, very much the same. One fun way to practice this is I might ask Joe, will you take a shape for me?
Sure.
I'm going to stand back.
How's this shape?
Hey, that's a great shape. I like the turnout. I like this arc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into a close embrace position and match his shape. And see what that feels like. Let's try a different shape.
Okay. Here.
Excellent. And he can stand back and walk away, and maybe come up and match my shape. So all the time, you could freeze us while we were dancing, and you could see that we're two people who are holding up our bodies, matching shapes, and that we just choose to do it really close to each other.
So now let's practice some sequences for the Savoy slow drag shapes and our walks. Okay, so for our first Savoy slow drag walking sequence, we're going to do a rock step into a lunge dip. It looks like this. Rock, step, lunge dip. Rock, step, lunge dip. Let's talk about some of the pointers here that we'd like to see. For the first part, for the rock step, notice that Jess is extending her leg back. We go rock, step.
So as we start this step from a neutral posture, the first thing that I'm going to feel from Joe is his rotation of the upper body into a contra body position, and I'm going to respond by extending my leg. So he rotates his rib cage this way or counterclockwise, and I also rotate my rib cage the same amount. And then when we rock, we're going to keep that twist. This is one of the more interesting transitions between going forward and back, is that we keep the same twist in the body.
So notice that we go rock, step, and our chest doesn't change. But if it changes, rock, step, and we start dipping, it's gonna shift everything,
Into homolata.
which is very cool, but not right now, because we want to practice and master our contra body movement.
So starting from a neutral posture, we're going to get the rotation of the upper body, the rock step, maintaining that rotation. And then when we're ready, Joe's going to switch that rotation as he passes through collection, and I'm going to step forward. My right leg is in between his legs, and the front of my left pelvis is resting a little bit towards the top of his thigh. So what that looks like is this part is resting, just touching a little bit here. So if I did that part first, and that's our position that we're getting into. Let's try it one more time. Rock, step, lunge.
Okay, a couple other pointers. If you notice Jess's foot, it's fairly close to mine, right? Sometimes if you keep it too far away, it becomes a lean on my body, which looks like this. Rock, step, and the foot's too far away. And so you might find yourself here. And so a good rule of thumb is that we want to try and have the follower's foot as close to mine as possible. And how about this time we do a fun little game. We're going to try and kiss our feet. So here we go.
Little foot kissing.
We go. A rock, step, and out. And how do we do? We were so close to that foot kiss. So we're going to practice one more time so we can get used to the dipping step. Ready? And how do we do? Yeah. Now, it's more like a French kiss, because we may have gone too far.
I don't know, Joe.
You
Moving
ready?
kind of fast for me here.
Here we go. So we go a rock, step, and we dip. And this feels pretty solid, right? Although our feet aren't touching, if I walk away, notice that Jess is balanced. And that's the key, right? So shoot for being close to the foot, maybe touching the foot, not too far away, not too much in, but be in a place of balance.
When I feel this part of my thigh touching the inside of his thigh is usually the money shot. It's usually I'm really perfectly positioned because my leg is really under his body more than it's under my body. Another thing to know if you're a follower and you're watching my feet, you may notice that I tend to be coming into a position with my heel raised up off the ground. I like this aesthetically I think it's pretty, and I like it for my lines, and so I choose to do this for my lines. But this is not a mandatory piece of the technique by any means. And if you like to do this and come in and use your heel and come down on a flat foot, that's totally fine. However, the back leg, if you try to put the heel down, will pull your pelvis away. So when you come forward onto your right leg, you can be on a flat foot or a raised heel, but the back heel does need to come off the ground.
One more point before we move on is for the leaders. Leaders, we want to make sure that with our arm wrapped around the follower, that we're not squeezing.
No seat belts.
No seatbelts. Remember, we want a butterfly connection, and if the followers are butterfly, we don't want to squish them. So, here we go. A butterfly connection, right? Nice and light. And we rock step, and as we step down, we have a twist through our body, but not a squeeze. We don't want to squish our beautiful butterflies. So keeping it relaxed and wrapped and around and connected, but without the squeeze. Okay, so for our next sequence, our rhythm is going to be rock, step, down, walk, walk, rock, step, walk, walk, down. So let's show that to you. We're going to go rock, step, down, walk, walk, rock, step, walk, walk, down. Let's try it together one more time. Here we go, at a different angle. It goes a rock, step, down, walk, walk, rock, step, walk, walk, down.
So one thing that I will do to figure out, sometimes Joe is taking a walk, and sometimes we're taking more of a lunge position where we're getting lower into it and using our pelvis more, is I will always be matching the amount of bend in his knees. Because when we're walking just backward or just forward, there's a certain amount of bend that we get to in each position. And I'm absorbing with my knees the same as he is. And when we take more of a lunge, he bends more and I bend more.
I tend to think about having a little bit more up energy to help me have a slightly larger step on my lunge. And that up suspension will indicate to my follower that we're about to enter the lunge. So watch the difference. And so here is a couple normal walks. Walk, walk, where I have a natural up, down, maybe a walk, walk. But when I enter into my lunge, I'm going to have a bigger up and a bigger down. So I say, hey, we're going to do this really cool drag glute shape called a backwards lunge.
Perfect.
So now let's put it again into our sequence from the tippity top. It goes a rock, step, lunge. We go walk, walk, rock, step, walk, walk, lunge. Now, let's practice turn technique in drag blues. So what we'd like to do is focus firstly on the shape of our body. Do you remember when we were walking in a straight line, we said to twist your chest, versus maybe walking like a zombie? Well, zombie walking isn't so great for going in a straight line, but zombie walking is great for turning in a circle. Again, we call that homolateral movement or same side movement. Twisting, for example, is not so great for turning in a circle. You don't really get anywhere. So let's practice our beginner's turn technique from the top to turns. So from the top, that means we come together with good posture. We connect as a butterfly together. And next we start to shift weight. And once we have an understanding of where our partner's weight is and where our own weight is, we can add direction. So our direction this time is a circular direction around. So just try that, going left and right, and step and step. So now let's try it by going faster and slower and see how that works. So maybe we'll start slow, and we'll pick up the speed, and slow it down, and pick up the speed again. And let's talk about some tips for this.
I'm going to be matching the energy that Joe gives in this step. So if he's moving himself kind of slow, I'm going to move myself kind of slow. If he picks up the speed and starts moving faster, I'm going to move faster as well. And what that does is it kind of, when we put the two fast ones together, we go really fast and it's super fun. But I'm propelling myself by matching the energy of the leader.
So just like a handshake, we're going to match the handshake, where the follower is going to match the energy. So let's show you what that looks like. So I'm going to give an energy of 5, and maybe you give less. And watch how slow we go. I'm pushing, I'm trying to go really fast, but for some reason it feels like Jess is absorbing the energy, partly because it's not being given or not being matched. So now look what happens when Jess gives a 5. Want to start out slow?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go. So I'm giving a 5. I'm giving a 5, but Jess isn't. She's kind of giving me like a 2. Well, now watch what she does. So how did you do that?
I just think about moving faster, and I'm very careful to make sure that I don't reach out to increase the speed. We'll try to take bigger steps. We feel the leader going faster, we think, oh, I need to go, so you take a bigger step. But if his direction is rotational, then I have to rotate faster. If I match his rotation by taking a bigger step, then I'm actually going linear, which will slow us down.
So let's see what that looks like. Let's try some wobble steps. So we wobble like a penguin, and we try to go faster.
We're trying to go faster, we're taking bigger steps, and it doesn't have a very pleasant aesthetic for me. So I'm going to be keeping my feet right under my pelvis. Since I'm moving, I can almost imagine I'm in some sort of tube, and I'm rotating in this tube. And if I want to go faster, I rotate faster by keeping my feet underneath me the whole time and thinking about the rotational movement. Beware of stepping outside or trying to reach around, which will be sometimes a little bit of an instinct. Think about your feet right under your pelvis, transferring weight, and going faster if you need.
So now let's talk about one more technique that you could try to make for a cleaner, perhaps a faster turn. And that's the bringing the right feet together. So now our right feet are going to kiss as we turn. And this is going to allow us to share an axis together. And so we're going to come together, and I'm going to step around, Jess steps around. I step, she steps. Energy, 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 energy. And we try as much as possible to keep our right legs together. And so let's practice that as individuals. So we're going to go forward and step, and forward and step, and forward and place. Let's go faster in place, and faster in place. It almost feels like a paddle step. Let's try that going backwards. So the right foot goes backwards, and the left foot goes in place. Back in place, back in place. And rotate, and faster, and then we get to our turn. So now putting that together, I'm thinking forward, Jess is thinking back, she's thinking forward, I'm thinking back. And the idea is to try and share that one axis. We go, boom, ba, a step, and step, and step, ba-da.
I can feel the contact on the inside of my right leg to the inside of his right leg as we do these pivots where we're making the right foot match. And it's one way that I can tell that we're doing this particular technique.
So now, let's put it from a walking sequence into a turning sequence. You can think of it as a contra-body sequence into a homolateral sequence. So we'll go contra-body, contra-body, contra-body. Now we want to create a turn. We got to push it into homolateral. Homolateral, 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 homolateral. Contra, 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 and contra, 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 and homolateral, homolateral, homolateral. The idea really comes from the chest. Does the chest twist with our step, or does it go with our step?
So now we're going to do a recap on all the pieces of technique that we've done so far, from holding our own body to going all the way to adding the aesthetics of drag blues. For me, what is the most fundamental technique piece that we have to have going all of the time, and then the next piece, and so on. And so that's going to start with our posture. So if we go from the feet all the way up to the head, we find our weight balanced in the middle of the feet, usually a little bit more to the balls of your feet, and more to the inside rather than the outside, with a little bit of turnout. So check out your feet. I like to think of a small piece of pie. From there, we're going to bend our knees and our hips a little bit so that we feel grounded into the ground. And from this hip socket up, we're going to be raising up and expanding all the way up the body, broadening the shoulders, engaging the belly button into the spine, and having our pelvis be neutral so that it's not tilted forward and it's not tilted back, but it's neutral and it's underneath the rib cage, maybe a little bit behind. So with our posture, now we can meet our partner. We have a palm-to-palm connection here. I find my tie to Joe's suspender, and then we're going to do our butterfly connection. It feels like a butterfly in the front, and my arm wraps around from armpit to fingertip. So the feeling of a nice embrace is our technique that we're trying to maintain throughout movement and shaping. So this feeling, as we come into our butterfly connection, it feels really nice. Maybe we're just standing, maybe we're stepping, but it feels really good and really comfortable. This feeling is maintained all the time when we're doing movement. So if he goes back, or even if he decides to go forward, I'm going to maintain this same sensation of softness and pliability, but maintaining the correct distance all the time. From here, once we have this, as long as I still have my posture, I haven't lost it, and we keep the same embrace without changing it or warping it, we have these two pieces, then we're going to think about weight transfers. I'm going to feel what axis Joe is on, what weight he is on, and I'm going to match the rate of his weight transfers as well as the direction. Once I get the direction and the rate of the weight transfers, then we can add contra body movement for our forward and back steps and lunges, which makes walking forward and backward work. Beware of zombie walking when you go forward and backward.
This one's my favorite.
It's okay for stepping side to side. It doesn't work for going forward and back.
So next is when we start to really add the aesthetics of drag blues by bringing in the shaping of the hips and the lower body.
When I feel Joe's pelvis going backward, I let my pelvis come forward a little bit so that I'm fitting like a glove with his shape. I'm also holding up my own body and moving my own body with my own energy so that at any point he could walk away, my leader could walk away, and I would continue to hold my position.
So we want to say thank you for joining us for our beginner's approach to drag blues technique. And video number 8 is going to be all about beginner sequences for applying all of these techniques in these walking shapes.
See you next time.
Be with the one you love. Know who I'm thinking of.